If you take a conscious, slow breath, you can help the nervous system switch into a relaxation response, which slows down the heart rate, which turns on your digestive functions and allows you to have a good digestive experience instead of something else that you don't want, right? Versus if you take many short breaths into your chest, you will be switching on your stress response, which will speed up your heart rate, which will turn off the digestion function of your body so that blood can be pumped into the arms and legs to fight, flight, get out of there and save yourself from the threat that is happening from the stress response, right? So that's the most important thing to understand about how breath is connected to the subconscious.
Hey there, and welcome to Ketamine Connections. I'm so excited you're here. Maybe you have heard about the incredible healing power of ketamine on a podcast, in a tweet, or even from your cousin's friend who's tried it. Whether you're thinking about this innovative approach for yourself, a loved one, or just curious to learn more about its transformative potential, you probably have a lot of questions. This show is all about exploring that potential by diving into topics like the subconscious mind, sharing amazing client transformation stories, and answering the most common questions I've received while helping hundreds of clients explore and transform their subconscious minds. Just like any good psychedelic journey, our episodes are designed to open your mind, spark your curiosity, and expand your understanding of what's possible. I'm your host, Anna Krishtal, aka your ketamine coach, and I'm thrilled to dive in and get curious with you. Let's get started. We're live. Hello. Hi, Liz.
Hi. Hello.
Oh, so excited to have you on. Okay. I know you're about to call me out, but before you do, if you could tell you one thing before you started all of this, what would you tell them?
I would tell her that it all comes together even more magical than I could ever imagine.
What a message. That's so beautiful. Okay, I wanted to get that out of the way because that's how I start every single interview on the podcast. And then before we hit record, you called me out big time, and I want you to deliver that message to the audience.
Yeah, I got the chance to listen to a few of your episodes, which I love. Your new podcast. Congratulations on the launch. But yeah, I heard one of the episodes you're talking about how ketamine is the first federally legal psychedelic. And that is why you went down this path and with this specific medicine. And so, yeah, I just wanted to call you out because breath will always be the most free and legal psychedelic that you can work with, as in terms of tools. And yeah.
I love this. I love that you called me out on that. And I know that there are people listening to this right now going, what is this chick smoking? How is breath a psychedelic? What is she even talking about? So why don't you explain to our audience what the heck is breathwork?
Yeah, so I mean, breathwork goes back to ancient cultures, but when we talk about using breath as a psychedelic tool to journey inward, I want to start with the work that Stanislav Grof did with holotropic breathwork, which was came together in like post 50s, I believe, after LSD had become illegal and research had to stop. Stanislav Grof was one of those researchers. And so he created an experience with breath where you could use breath as a psychedelic to take you into that type of altered state of consciousness. And so he could still work with his patients and his clients in these psychedelic states in order to access, like you like to talk about, the subconscious, memories that need to be processed, feelings that aren't being looked at, all of that you can access by simply changing the way you breathe, which is pretty wild.
Changing the way you breathe. Like, I just want everyone actually listening to this right now to connect with the breath for just a second and just be aware that you're breathing, because we take how many breaths in a day. I just heard the number recently and I don't remember it off the top of my head. Thousands upon thousands of breaths, and the ones, like, how many are we actually aware of, like, on our best day, truly, like, how many are we actually aware of? So yeah, connecting us to the breath. And it's so funny, right? Like, it was the 1960s that all of that psychedelic research was going on, and it was going really well. And it's such a bummer that it was outlawed. It was 1969 that it was outlawed. And so a lot of these researchers did two things, because they, most of them now we know actually were doing them both simultaneously. One, they continued their research just underground and couldn't, we're talking about we're talking about professors at reputable universities. They couldn't just they were reliant on state funded money and government funded money. So they couldn't just be like, screw you, we're still going to do this. They're like, okay, we'll show you that we're following the rules. So they took a lot of their continued psychedelic research underground. And we've seen a lot of books come out in the past 5 years of that ongoing research. And then two, they developed processes like holotropic breathwork that they could practice above board and still have altered states of consciousness, which I love because it just shows there's so many ways to access the subconscious mind. Like,
Yes.
infinite, right? And it's there's so many ways that it's almost like it wants to be found, even though it's beneath the surface. It's almost as if it wants us to find it. We have psychedelics, we have breath, we have hypnosis, we have meditation, we have time in nature. Like, we have so many tools to access the breath. And so how does the breath relate to the subconscious?
Yeah, so the breath, like you were talking about a second ago, about how many unconscious breaths do we take, right? So breath is one of the few things that we do that is both conscious and subconscious process, right? We can slow down our breath, think about it, take a deep breath in, take a deep breath out, and have a very conscious experience controlling how that works and how that affects our body versus, other things like your heart rate, your digestion. All of these are functions of the body that run in the subconscious that you don't have direct access to in the same way as breath. So breath becomes this bridge that allows you to influence what's happening in the subconscious, because breath is also very importantly connected to the autonomic nervous system, which plays into this as well, right? Because our nervous system is what affects those other subconscious functions like heart rate and digestion. So again, if you take a conscious, slow breath, you can help the nervous system switch into a relaxation response, which slows down the heart rate, which turns on your digestive functions and allows you to have a good digestive experience instead of something else that you don't want, right? Versus if you take many short breaths into your chest, you will be switching on your stress response, which will speed up your heart rate, which will turn off the digestion function of your body so that blood can be pumped into the arms and legs to fight, flight, get out of there and save yourself from the threat that is happening from the stress response, right? So that's the most important thing to understand about how breath is connected to the subconscious.
Amen. And this is something I talk about all the time. I teach a nervous system reset yoga class. I've been teaching it for a while now. And then I do this in client work as well. And what I'm always saying is the mind-body connection is a two-way street. Okay. So just as much as we can sit here and I could start thinking about any one thing that stresses me out, it's an option, right? I could sit here and be fully present in body, but my mind is jumping out to whatever. And thinking about that stressful thing is going to activate my body to respond with a stress response, right? My breath will change. My circulation will change. Like, everything in my physiology will change to match the threat, the perceived threat that I'm imagining in my mind. Simultaneously, we can become aware of our body and say, oh wow, I haven't taken, like, my breathing's really shallow, or oh wow, I'm entering a really stressful situation. Okay, let me calm down my body as a way to also calm down the mind, right? If the mind is stressed, and this is happening everywhere, especially since COVID, we have so many more people suffering with anxiety. We have so many more people that are stressed out. We have so many more people with social anxiety. And so we feel all of these thoughts, these ruminations, these repetitive thoughts. And we're like, what do we do with these? And it's like, use the body to hack the mind. And the breath is the best thing, as you're saying, because I can't control my digestion, really. I can eat things that help it. I can take vitamins and supplements that help it, but my breath, I have very conscious access to it.
Totally. Yeah. That is the power of breath, which is that you have the ability to choose what state of being you're in. I think that's what is becoming very problematic today, is that people are stuck in the stress response or stuck with the anxiety. And the breath is really what gives you that access to choose, which is the most empowering thing that you can have. You can decide that I'm going to relax my body and not think about work, or I'm going to notice that I'm having an emotion, maybe some panic is coming out up, right? And I can slow down my breath and be with my body and soothe it to know that it's safe, right? There's so much access you have with the breath.
Amen. And, full disclosure, my goal is to be as honest as possible on this podcast, knowing that there's also censorship out in the world. But full disclosure, in my one-on-one coaching practice, before any client goes into their first ketamine session, I teach them breathing techniques to calm down in case they are activated in their ketamine experience. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that? I mean, I know what I'm doing, but I'm like, maybe you're going to teach me something right now that I could add to my practice.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of tools out there to ground yourself in those moments. The most absolute simplest foundational technique is the deep belly breath. So, like I said before, if you're breathing deep into the belly, so you want to let your belly actually balloon out. I feel like that's a misconception a lot of people have, that I'll tell people like, this is how you're supposed to breathe. And they're like, no, but like your lungs are in your chest. When you expand the fullest capacity of your lungs, which is what's going to create a relaxation response, they stretch down into the torso and the belly comes out. And so you're filling up from the belly, then the ribs, lastly into the chest. It should be about a 5-second inhale, 5-second exhale. The longer the exhale, the more relaxed you will get. And those are the most, like, if you know those foundations, you will be able to calm your body and be with the emotion. And I think another misconception is like, oh, you're calming your body and like not validating or acknowledging the emotion. No, like you're doing that work so that then you can be in a state of curiosity instead of a state of contraction or judgment about what's happening, what's coming up.
Amen. Yeah. And I was telling you this quote before we hit record. It's one of my favorite quotes, and I bring this to so much of the work that I do. Do not try and control the mind, control the breath, and it will control the mind. And we have this monkey mind. We've known about it for thousands of years. Like we have the yogis and like the Buddhists. We have so many Eastern traditions that are writing about the monkey mind and the churnings of the mind, the chitta vrittis, right? And so it's been known for a long time that this mechanism up here, that in its brilliance, in its advancement, also left unchecked, left unruly, can go anywhere. And so especially when we're talking about in a psychedelic journey, and that's like something that's keeping a lot of people from working with psychedelics, is like, well, I don't want it to bring up bad memories. I don't want it to bring up bad thoughts. I don't want it to bring up bad whatever. And one, nothing comes up for no reason. But two, the breath is the best tool in that moment to redirect and refocus whatever's going on in towards your desired state of being, right? And again, yes, not overriding what's happening, but if I'm stressed, my capacity to deal with thoughts that are undesirable is so much less than when I'm patient, and then I can actually sit with myself in a way that is kind and loving and validating rather than we don't have time for this. We're late, like whatever else story I might be telling.
Yeah, totally. You know what you were saying about, controlling the body first and then the mind follows suit is such an important thing that I don't think their mainstream culture like gets at all. But it's like such a big truth that one that I love to share because, a lot of people will ask me or say like, oh no, I don't want to learn about breath work. Like I need to learn how to meditate first. And I'm always like, but actually like breath work, and this is the type of breath work, the more ancient type of breath work versus what we talked about with the holotropic, which is more currently created. Those type of ancient breath works are made to pair with meditation so that like you calm the body and then the mind follows suit. You don't have to then sit there and fight with the monkey mind. You don't have to fight it. You simply create the ease in your body and it will slow down. It will stop cycling through all the thoughts, all the anxiety, all the overthinking, whatever it is that's keeping you safe. If you create the safety here in the body with the breath, then you can have more stillness in the mind.
Gosh, right? Like everything that you're saying, I'm like, I was diagnosed with ADD when I was a kid and medicated for it for a while. And it's like I've been on this journey for so long. I've been unmedicated for a long time with that. And so much of it is like becoming aware that I have trouble sitting still, that I'm fidgety, and so I get to work with that, right? Because a lot of what we're talking about also is creating balance, like we have a natural propensity towards imbalance. That's why everybody in New York City is practicing power yoga. Same thing about LA, right? Because it's like feeds like, and we want to keep it going. But learning how to calm my body and then knowing that if my mind is shooting out, and a lot of this relates to the work that Dr. Gabor Mate has done around ADD and how it's in safety in the body, which creates shooting out of the mind. It's the only explanation of ADD that's ever made sense to me. And so I've been really focusing for a few years now of like, if my mind is shooting out, okay, where in my body do I feel discomfort? Where in my body do I feel unsafe? Where in my body can I like shift? Or do I actually not want to be here? And do I need to just like get up and leave, when it's within my control, to honor what my body's experiencing?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Was doing some writing recently actually about like the prevalence and almost glorification of having ADHD or ADD, and like my question is like, why is not more people talking about it from the standpoint of like create regulation in your body, create some safety, and you won't have the same degree of difficulty being distracted if the more you're in your body, the more you're regulated. And breath is a wonderful tool for that. So it's interesting you're bringing that into this conversation because I agree.
Yeah, and this has been a big conversation as I have more people on here, and we'll talk about integration at some point. But as I have more people on the podcast that are talking about integration, what we're talking about is validating, right? Because for a long time after I graduated grad school, I was just like, ADD is a scam. I just used it to get the drugs. I don't actually think it's real. I'm done. And I put the diagnosis down. And then really recently in the past, like, I think only just a year, I'm like, oh, actually my mind does work differently. Oh, I actually think in a different way than other people. So it's nice. I'm happy to be at this place where I have tools, right? And so it's like not using, not validating or invalidating whatever label is there, whatever diagnosis is there, but saying, okay, here's what we have. What makes it better? What makes it worse? And do just so that there's knowledge around it so that I can say, okay, when I do breath work, right, I feel better. When I shake my body out before I sit down to work, I feel better. When I honor taking breaks from my sitting down laptop, I feel better. So just really acknowledging that there's so many tools And some of them make us feel better and others make us feel worse.
Definitely, definitely. And I feel like this touches on another like topic that I am so interested in, which is like utilizing these diagnoses as context more than like a box that you are in now, right? You have tools that can shift your relationship with the symptoms that you're having that fall into this diagnosis that you have, right? Instead of it being like, this is just the way I am, I can't focus and I'll never make anything because it's not possible. Right. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's like there's no we create our own fate, right?
Yes.
So we can and a lot of there's I haven't figured out how to like put this into podcast form. There's so many mechanisms that make us forget our free will.
Mm-hmm.
And we live in a society where we believe we have so much less choice than we do. And so even from that perspective of like you were saying before we hit record, like who knows what's happening with the legality of psychedelics in the US, but God bless them if they try to outlaw breath, right?
They're not going to be able to do that one. It'll be pretty hard.
No, then we're all going to need space helmets. I don't know, we're going to need something. But so okay, so breath work for, coping, right? Like with something that might come up in a psychedelic journey, and you mentioned so beautifully, right? Anytime you lengthen the exhales more than the inhales, you're calming yourself. So focusing on just like long exhales, and like I was doing it while you were cueing it, of like going from the lower system up to like from the lower belly up to the chest, and like really like expanding, right? Especially those of us in female bodies, we've been trained to like actually like shut it down and like
Yeah.
scrunch and flex
Hold
and
that
things like
belly
that.
in.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's actually like starting a revolution to be like, I'm gonna let my belly hang out and I'm gonna take these big breaths. I'm gonna take up space.
Yeah. I mean, it is truly like breathing with the fullest capacity of your lungs is not only like changing the state of your nervous system and so therefore how you feel, like that act of like opening up your torso and your heart space and your letting your belly hang out, like that's all rewiring you from staying small, right? Breath is also like just simply an expansive experience when you allow yourself to go deep with it, both in an inward journey or just simply with a deep belly breath in and out to calm your system.
Amen. And so I love that. And I teach it literally probably every day at this point, how to like different breathing techniques to calm down the nervous system. There's always a link for it in the show notes, actually. And then so that's like calming breath. And then we also have activating breath, right?
So I can talk about a little bit about that. You have a range of them. Some of the ones that you've probably heard of, if you are in the realm of breathwork at all, would be like a Wim Hof type breath, or Kapalabhati is also known as breath of fire. And there's also a Bhastrika. And then a holotropic style breath would be either a two-part breath where you breathe into the belly and then the chest, exhale one full breath. So those are activating breathwork techniques. And so this is the really cool thing about breath too, is that you get to play with the full spectrum of your nervous system. So not only are you down regulating, creating relaxation, creating a space for your body to restore and heal, but you also have the activating techniques, which allow you to play with the stress response, play with how much stress capacity do you have to hold, but doing it in a way where you are fully in control. So like I can do a bunch of Kapalabhati breath and feel that edge of like, oh, my body, it's tensing up, it's feeling stressed out. Can I hold this a little longer? Can I relax while I do this active breath? And that rewires the nervous system to expand your ability to hold more and more stress. So a really beautiful example of that is my own story. I was diagnosed with PTSD in 2020, and my nervous system was about the size of a thimble. I couldn't do much at all. And now 5-ish years, a little under 5 years later, like after doing a lot of breath work, I've also done weightlifting work to work with my nervous system capacity as well. But like now I'm deadlifting over 110 pounds, like I do breath work, daily to play with that and to create more capacity for me to be able to hold space for my clients, for me to be able to, take my art installation and build it at a festival and then dance at the festival all day. Like that was not possible for me
Wow.
5 years ago. And it's all possible because of my ability with breath and other tools, psychedelics and weightlifting. Those are all ways that I've been able to expand that capacity of my nervous system. And so that's where like you get into the realm of possibility of where can you go with this? Where can you go with your life?
That's so freaking inspiring, Liz, to take you right. It's like what you were saying earlier of like not thinking that something is your fate, not being like, oh, this is just how it is, right? You could have gotten that diagnosis and just been like, oh, that's how it is, right? But you had enough support, enough knowledge, even if it wasn't knowledge at the time, but enough knowledge to know that you could do something to improve your state of being, to improve like what was fated, right? Which is like your early childhood experience that led to the symptoms that reached, that's so common, right? It's like we are not aware of it until we're in like such big imbalance, right? It's like
Oh yeah.
one of my teachers says, first, whatever we say this all the time on the podcast, whatever your relationship to God, universe, source, spirit, angels, guides, the Big Bang Theory, that, first they throw a pebble and then they throw a rock. And then if you're still not listening, they throw a boulder, right? And so it's like some of us, I'm one of them. I can be so dense, which is why one of my prayers to my energetic support squad is make it obvious. I'm so dense sometimes, just like make it really obvious. And so that boulder hit you and you're like, nope, I'm going to expand my window of tolerance. I'm going to do breath work. I'm going to find a way out of this. And like, look at you now. And I saw you're not just weightlifting. I haven't been to a gym in a long time. But you're also like using that to like grow a garden, right? Like now you can carry those bags. I saw that on your
bags of dirt around.
Yeah, that's incredible. Okay, there is something I want to talk about because I wish someone had warned me about this. Like I went to my first breathwork journey like 10 years ago at this point. It was one of those activating ones with like where you basically induce hyperventilation, right? And so that's what a lot of like the holotropic style breathworks do, is that you're hyperventilating, and through that hyperventilation, it opens the doors to something. Mm-hmm. And I just remember being on the floor of some gym somewhere. I'm like crying. I see myself as like a 10-year-old and I'm like, oh my God, like that was so hard, that thing that happened. And like it's like a psychedelic, right?
100%. Yeah. I have journeyed with psychedelics and I've journeyed with breath, and they can be very, very similar experiences. I think that's probably why I am drawn to the breathwork journeys, because I first found psychedelics and in my healing work for myself. But yeah, you are opening you're lifting the veil almost in between those states of being, the what's conscious and what's subconscious. And so depending on it's also set, and setting is very important depending on what's happening in your mindset, what's happening into your life at that moment, where you are, whether in a big group or a small group doing this, or perhaps at home doing it. That is all going to change how you experience it. But yeah, you can definitely have, difficult, challenging memories come up, just like you could in a psychedelic experience. And they can feel really real. You can also like I've heard people who connect with people who have passed. So you really are like lowering this veil and being able to tap into this space of energy where a lot more is accessible. I'll put it that way for you to be conscious of.
Yeah, I was such a baby 10 years ago in this space. Like I had been practicing yoga already for 10 years, but I hadn't yet. It was just like I was just starting to wander into other modalities like hypnosis, like breath work, like all these other things. I'd already tried meditation, but I remember in that journey by the end of it, I had my 5-year-old and my 17-year-old just like here. I was just like, it's
Mm-hmm.
okay, it's okay. And that is like, I mean, gosh, it does not get more psychedelic than that, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I was just thinking maybe we can tie this right around in a bow with what we were talking about before with the body, which that's how you're accessing this perhaps stored trauma, right? That's the body keeps onto and will hold on to protect you. And so the breath really connects you into the body, into the somatic experience. And so that is really why you can connect into those really deep memories, those deeper inner child parts of yourselves and all of that. The breath will connect you into those experiences.
Amen. I mean, yoga is so mainstream these days, and I know it's a passion of both you and I. We're both, dedicated yogis, and gosh, like if you haven't cried in a pigeon pose, like are you even doing yoga? And it took so long for that to make sense to me. And it's what you're saying. It's like the body's holding on to things until it's time, and when there's enough safety, when there's enough relaxation, when you've stopped running through your day long enough, then the body in its like infinite wisdom and infinite care and like infinite desire to be helpful, it's like, hey, remember this thing you never felt? Like, hey, remember this thing that you didn't know what to do with 20 years ago? Like, are you ready? I think you're ready now.
Yeah, and they serve it up to you on a silver platter. But yeah, it's like the misconception of like, oh well, I don't have to feel this. I'm not going to feel this now. I'm going to distract. I'm going to numb. I'm going to go be busy with my life. But that stuff doesn't actually just like go away. It gets held on to. And then, yeah, like you said, like 10, 20 years later, maybe the week following after an experience, like it's there and it's ready to be looked at. It needs to be looked at in order to move through the body. When we hold on to emotion and memories and trauma, they can often become maladaptive. Like you said, the body is always trying to help us. But if it is telling me, like for example, something that lived in my body for a long time was like the idea that I am a burden to people. If I carry that on beyond the time in my life when there was trauma, if I carry that on, then I'm losing out on being able to connect with other people and like disconnecting myself, keeping myself isolated. And so that's why it's so important to use the tools like psychedelics, like breath, like whatever else there is, hypnosis, right? To create the space to go back and process these things that we've been holding on to, that's keeping us like locked in these what we might call self-sabotaging patterns. They're really our body just trying to protect us the way it knows how.
Amen. And I want to tie that back to something that you were saying a while back too of, okay, so if you have a story that you're a burden, right? You're unlikely to ask for help. And
Yes,
therefore asking for
definitely.
help.
Know that one.
Asking for help will then in the nervous system, the mind, the body, it will register as a threat, right?
Yes.
I can't ask for help because I'm a burden and burdens don't ask for help, right? So then it's like, okay, as you become aware of this story that you're carrying around, and then you're like, oh my God, I need to ask for help. Oh my God, I need to ask for help. Oh my God, I need to ask for help, right? Not maybe like because you're like at that tipping point of like, if I don't ask for help, I'm kind of screwed. But also like, as you become more aware of it, what I had to do, I had a similar story about asking for help, but not because I was a burden. It was different. I had to learn to ask for help is what I'm saying.
Many
And
people do.
thank you.
It's a big part of the healing process, I feel like, generally.
Yeah. And I remember I felt so advanced when I started asking for help when I didn't need it. And to this day, I was just at the grocery store like a couple weeks ago, and they were like, "Do you need help carrying this to your car?" And I was like, "I don't need it, but I'll take it. Come on down." Like,
Come on down.
But if I was less further along and I was like, "Oh my God, I need to ask for help," but asking for help is registering as a threat. I'm scared to ask for help because of this old story, because of this trauma, because of whatever. Then I can use the breath to calm down and
Exactly.
breathe through that. And that's one of the most brilliant things that like is not spoken about enough, I don't think, is that whatever we think is a threat, if it's not an actual threat, if it's just like a learned, response from trauma, childhood, whatever, then we can use the breath to normalize it until it stops being a threat. Because then what our subconscious mind says is, why does she keep turning towards the threat? It must not be a threat. And then that whole armor comes down.
Mm-hmm. And that's when you get to be able to change the subconscious, which when you can change the subconscious, you can pretty much do anything you want with your life. It's like if change feels impossible to people who are just trying to work with the conscious mind. But if you know that you can work with the subconscious mind, that changes everything.
Amen. I mean, it's like a literal David and Goliath, right? Like the conscious mind, 5%, the subconscious mind, 95%. You're using the 5 against the 95, like good luck. And that's why people are like, oh, that stuff doesn't work or whatever it is. It's like, yeah, if you're still willing yourself to change, white knuckling, whatever it is, you'll be doing that for the rest of your life. And it'll be effortful. Whereas you
Mm-hmm.
change the way that the subconscious mind works, and then it's effortless, right? And it becomes, honestly, it becomes so, in my opinion, fun, because then you actually see progress
Yes.
rather than, it's like, oh, I gotta do this thing. I gotta do this thing. It's like, no, it actually becomes fun because you're like, oh yeah, I used to think that way and act that way. And now I don't. What else can I change? Right? Like, what else am I empowered to actually move through?
Yeah, this is reminding me of like a meme that someone shared in a group with me that like did not resonate with me, but it's so on point with this. It was like a meme about being upset because like you're aware of all the different problems in your life and like crying and being upset about it. And I'm like, I don't feel that way because as soon as I'm aware of something, that means I can work with it because I know how to work with my subconscious.
So, how do you know if you're aware?
I do think it's kind of a process for me, depending on what it is. Sometimes the awareness, I have to let that develop for a little while and just like be noticing what's going on with something that I'm like, is this working for me? Is this not? Like
Hmm.
asking questions like, when is it working for me? Or when is it working against me? Something like that. Getting curious about it. So there's awareness and then the curiosity builds. You got to build that. And then once I feel like I have a well-rounded awareness is when I can then perhaps use some of my tools to reprogram, utilizing breathwork or hypnosis or do a ceremony around it or something.
Yeah, absolutely. I like what you're saying, right? Like the most basic question, like, is this working or is it not working, right? And I think even bringing it down to the level of like, am I enjoying this? And, not like, is this fun? Does this feel good? Would I be willing to shout this from the rooftops, right? Of like, here's the thing. So yeah, awareness, curiosity, breath, all of it. Oh my gosh, I love it. Anything else that we did not mention today?
I mean, there's endless avenues we could go down. I feel like you'll just have to have me back on again for more conversation, but I think
Done
we've
deal.
covered everything.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we did a great job. I'll mention this in the intro. I love breathwork sessions with you. They are so special. I've worked with a lot of breathwork facilitators, and there's something about the space that you hold that is really, really, truly special. So thank you for being a breathwork facilitator in this world and offering this medicine up to the people.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it is a big passion of mine. And I hope that's what is being felt in the space, because it's been so transformative for me to get to hold space and witness and encourage someone else's experience that could unlock what I've unlocked. Like, that's such an honor. And I take a lot of pride in holding those spaces. So
yeah, and it shows. It really, really shows. And that was the one thing I did want to say that we have not mentioned is, I've been for a long time, about 5 years, maybe, 5-ish years, I've been on the hunt for things that I can do that make me feel as good as psychedelics, but aren't psychedelics, because I don't want, just for my own, it's probably my own prejudice against substances or whatever it is. Like, I don't want to be taking substances all the time. I don't want to be medicating with external all the time. And breathwork is something that I have found that it keeps me coming back, because there's so much medicine there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is something that I talked with friends about. It's like, how amazing is it that, like, I love a good ceremony, psychedelic trip to learn from, but that's, you got to plan for that. It could be 6 to 8 hours, 12 hours long, right? But you can literally do, a 5-minute practice, or if you want to go really deep, an hour-long journey. Like, again, you don't have to plan around that too much. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's not just like, gosh, 6 to 8 hours. That's just the substance. What about the stuff that it brings up? Like, there's things that have been brought up that have taken me out for weeks or months, just like, oh my God, like, I've been carrying that around, where it's like with the breath, I feel like if it's coming up through breath, it's already coming up to be let through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's a bit more like manageable, or like you just have a little bit more control versus other more, I was talking with a friend who does Aya ceremonies, and she was like, I really liked that I could be in control, but still be in touch with that kind of consciousness, that kind of energy, and it not, take so much of a chunk out of my life to prep and integrate and all of that. It's good to do that every now and then. But I think the breathwork journeys are so perfect for in between those bigger ceremonies to continue integration, to continue uncovering, what else is there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we'll link all of your links down in the show notes so that people can find you for one-on-one breath work. They can find you for group breath work. They can find you. They can subscribe to your email newsletter, because you're like traveling to all the coolest festivals with your art, so people can know where to find you.
Yeah, I'm really excited. In the new year, I am launching a new newsletter series about my art. So if you're curious about that, you can subscribe to the newsletter and keep up to date. Yeah, I'll be all around SoCal showing Portals, my art installation, in the spring. I'm excited.
Which is one of my favorite art installations in the world, which is how we met.
I know. I was just remembering. I was like, I forgot. Anna has seen Portals, actually. She got to see a very early iteration, which barely had like wooden feet and was like flapping in the wind.
Well, I'm going to keep an eye on your newsletter, because I'm already on there and I need to know where it's next so that I can come see it. Thank you so much for being on here today, Liz. So appreciate your time and your passion and your contribution. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So lovely to be here and connect.
Bye. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Ketamine Connections. I hope you found our discussion insightful and empowering. Remember that understanding the subconscious mind and how to make the most of ketamine therapy can truly transform someone's healing journey. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to share it with your friends and family and anyone who might benefit from this information. So few people considering ketamine therapy are fully educated about its potential and the impact that it has on the subconscious mind. Your share could be the key element to their transformation. Don't forget to subscribe to Ketamine Connections so that you never miss an episode. And if you have a moment, I absolutely adore reading your reviews. So your feedback really helps me feel like this is an engaging exercise. Otherwise, I just feel like I'm talking into empty internet space. So your review really helps light me up and also helps me reach more audience. So I would appreciate one if you're willing. And please use the link below to submit any questions or topics that you would like covered. I cannot wait to hear from you and to co-create this journey together. Until next time, keep exploring, stay curious, and embrace the possibilities that are available in this moment right here, right now. Thanks so much. See you next time on Ketamine Connections.